It's Monday, the 30th of April 2018, and this is your EV News Daily. Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. In fact, wherever you're listening around the world, a very warm welcome from London in the UK. Here is today's news about electric cars and the future of transport. My name is Martin Lee, and I go through every EV article online so you don't have to. Coming up on the show today, Jay Leno talks about his future classics, including electric cars, and how ABB are going to be powering electric trucks for a sustainable transport future. But first of all, it is Tesla earnings week. Pinch punch, first of the month tomorrow and all that. And the day after, on Wednesday, the 2nd of May, it is going to be Tesla's first quarter results call. We're going to find out how the investors, at least, I'm not an investor in Tesla, are going to be finding out how those results have done. Well, certain analysts, like those at S&P Global Markets, reckon there's going to be a loss of $3.52 per share in quarter one, comparing to $1.33 per share in quarter one last year. First quarter sales are said to be $3.3 billion. And isn't that just an indication of how big the Tesla business is getting? And some people kind of see them as just starting to scratch the surface of electric cars. And I suppose on a global scale they are, but check that out. First quarter sales expected to be $3.3 billion, up from $3.28 in the last quarter of 2017, and a net loss of nearly $700 million. Well, they need some good news to report, don't they, really, after a bit of a sticky month, I guess we'll call it that. What with the Model S, 123,000 of the Model S is being recalled with that steering component. Not necessarily something that every market needs to worry about, only particularly cold markets, and only the cold markets where a certain type of chemical was it used on the roads to de-ice them. But anyway, all Model S's affected being recalled, 123,000 of them. Then they had all the issues with the autopilot, the incredibly sad story of the Apple engineer who lost his life, and the Model 3 assembly line being paused earlier this month to install some new equipment, and that hopefully unlocks some future gains. However, what Tesla has been described as by one of the analysts who works at Bain's, they call it a cash incinerator. Unlike investors that invest in tech giants like Google and Apple, generating more cash than they can possibly know what to do with. Apple particularly, it's got these huge cash reserves, a lot of them offshore. In fairness, can't bring them back to America without paying a whole bunch of tax. Tesla is a cash incinerator. Yes, they spend a lot of money, but all companies at that stage need to spend a load of money on R&D and getting ahead of the game. And Tesla can't do that by waiting to be a profitable company. They could do, but they would forever be a very small niche car company that makes 50 cars a year for billionaires. They could probably make a profit doing it that way. We look forward to the results in a couple of days' time on Wednesday, the 2nd of May. Well, moving to Ireland, and about a third of Irish motorists, following all the good publicity around electric cars lately, say that they are open to buying an EV the next time they change their car. That's according to some research done by the AA in Ireland. Quite a big study, about 5,000 people took part in this, and it was just over 30%, 30.8% of the respondents said that although they were unsure about EVs, they were very open-minded to buying an electric car, and the electric car they buy, or rather the next car they buy being an electric option. Now, Connor Forhan, who is the Director of Consumer Affairs at the AA, said this, and I quote, "There's some good news. The fact that a third of motorists are open to the idea of going electric, and we need to see the Irish government make electric vehicles even more enticing so that as much of this cohort as possible is going to make that change." And I end quote there. Well, someone who has seen the light with EVs and electric cars and who is a big fan of them is Jay Leno, comedian, famous stand-up host, and in my eyes, total legend for having Jay Leno's Garage. What do you do when you are one of America's biggest TV stars and then you retire? Well, you could stop and play golf all day, or you could launch your own YouTube channel, which at the start had hits in the tens of thousands and now has hits in the millions. I love Jay Leno's Garage. It started years ago, genuinely, as Jay showing off his collection of cars. But now all sorts of weird and wonderful cars make their way to Jay Leno's garage to be shown off on his YouTube channel. He knows a lot about collecting cars. I love the little features he does with his valuation experts as well, talking about which cars are classics and are going to be worth loads of money in the future. And according to Jay Leno, the next generation of collectors' cars will include EVs. He says including the very first gen Toyota Prius. He reckons that, although it sounds like an odd pick, he says this, and I quote, "I think you'll see the first-gen Priuses where people will say, look at how simple it is compared to the modern stuff. And one day, eventually, there'll be classic EVs with tech that people won't even believe exists." He recently turned down someone trying to sell him a first-gen electric car, but he wouldn't say what brand or make it was, for $440,000. That could well be, maybe even, say the first Tesla Roadster, the one that's not in space. Say maybe someone approached Jay and said, "Hey, want my first-gen electric car, my first Tesla Roadster? It's going to cost you $440,000. He is a sensible man. He's a rich man, but he's a sensible man. And he said no to that, but he reckons some of these EVs are going to be future classics. There might not be too many future trucks 40 years down the line that people think is a classic truck that they want to add to their collection. Doesn't mean we shouldn't try and electrify them, though. And ABB, the global leader in EV charging infrastructure, is going to increase its support for heavy commercial vehicles. They say that e-trucks could be about 15% of the global truck share by 2030. That is 12 years away, I must admit, but a lot of trucks on the road, a lot of places like, rural India where they're not going to be EVs tomorrow, compared to some places where there'll be a lot of electric trucks. And ABB, so they're working on charging solutions for trucks up to 600 kilowatts. They've been working on truck charging for 12 years of R&D, they say. More than 6,500 DC fast chargers from ABB are installed globally. So that's the proof they need to start spending more money on R&D for some very fast truck chargers. The fastest car chargers we've seen, about 350 kilowatts. ABB pointing out they also, of course, have everything from 150 kilowatt chargers up to 600 kilowatt chargers. So not just about the trucks, but about the cars as well. They want to create a 24/7 network so that whatever vehicle turns up to their chargers can plug in and get going. Well, let's talk about the Formula E results over the weekend. Mentioned ABB, they're the big sponsor of Formula E. Didn't mention it yesterday. I know there are so many people who might not catch the Formula E race on Saturday, and then they were watching on Catch Up or on their TiVo or Skybox. So I left it a day. Anyway, now the highlights are out on the internet. Formula E, by the way, who have been doing this for ages. Formula One just catching up with their new American owners, making the whole sport more glitzy and a lot more on demand as well, because the old owners of Formula One never wanted anything on the internet, really. Those darn kids watching their YouTubes. However, Formula E's been brilliant at it for years. So now the highlights are out there. I think we can talk about it. Jean-Éric Vergne got his third victory this year. And if you are watching Jev, it was a brilliant performance from lights out to the flag being waved. The Techeetah driver had a Techeetah. That's what I said? I think it's what I said. Driver had a fantastic race. Always a really sweet one when you win at home as well. He grew up on the streets of Paris and he won in Paris as well. So he's leading Sam Bird by like 31 points now in the title fight. If you're not into Formula E, totally understand it. It does take a little while to get into, but I know lots of people on the podcast who listen to this will be into that, and you'll know I say when it is just a brilliant racing series to follow. Always hard to overtake on those tight confines of city streets, and Paris was difficult as well, but we did see some good overtaking and a couple of crazy moments as well, a couple of crashes. Always fascinating to watch a bit of Formula E. So we say goodbye to France and we head to Berlin for round 9 of the championship. The BMW I Berlin E-Prix is going to be on May the 19th. We also know that Formula 1 world champion Nico Rosberg is going to be driving the next gen Formula E car. That's the Batman car that just looks so sweet. It's the car that is developed rather than the Williams F1 team. The McLaren F1 team were doing the tech for the next gen Formula E car. So the battery and the drivetrain, all that kind of stuff, means you haven't got to change cars halfway through the race. And a Formula One driver taking that out onto the streets. Firstly, amazing. Fascinating, going to get a ton of press, loads more people interested in electric cars thanks to Nico Rosberg, who's already tweeting about it, excited about it. It's going to be an amazing thing to see. And the Jaguar I-Pace is going to be on the streets at Berlin as well, because if you didn't know, the I-Pace racing series is going to be supporting Formula E. And so I really hope that they either televise it either before or after the qualifying or something, or I'm sure the cameras will roll. Just make sure that we see both of those things. A couple of weeks to wait until Berlin. I am dead excited. Well, thank you so much for listening today. I would love to spread the word about electric cars if you can. Share this with somebody who might be interested. You can listen to every previous episode of the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, TuneIn, Stitcher, SoundCloud now, and the blog at evnewsdaily.com. Remember to subscribe, which means you haven't got to think about downloading it. It'll do it first and free and automatically. And if you can rate and review, take 2 minutes to do that, I would really appreciate it. Say hi on Facebook, LinkedIn and Twitter. Search our socials, search your socials for EV News Daily. You'll find it. You can click on like and subscribe and follow and all that kind of stuff. If you want to stay in touch, come and say hi. Send me a DM or a message and I'll always have a little chat. Love it when people do that. Have a wonderful day and I'll catch you tomorrow.